Okay, so sorry for that digression. Let's get back on track. The original question was, what powers in the list here? Somebody said Commander-in-Chief, and I jumped all over that and went into a long-winded...
Chief Executive.
Okay, the Constitution says that the President is Chief Executive too, right? You know, it does. He shall be Chief Executive. But it immediately follows that by saying he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, which frankly doesn't sound that impressive. Almost sounds as if the President is the agent of Congress. He shall be Chief Executive, and he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Seems to suggest that Congress makes the law and has some intent when doing so, and the President shall execute the law faithful to the intent of Congress. Anything else on this list? Voice of the people, that's in the Constitution? No, that's not in the Constitution.
I think Chief Executive would be the best.
It's really just these two. Of all these supposed powers, you open up your textbook, you're going to come up with some list, okay? I'm pretty sure, if there's not a list like that in this textbook, I'm going to be embarrassed, I guess, but I just haven't looked at that chapter in the textbook recently, so I can't remember, but most textbooks certainly have a list like this. Okay? This list that I put together where I was sampling from various textbooks, there's only these two. It's in there.
Chief Executive, Chief Legislator, Chief Diplomat, Commander-in-Chief, Chief of State.
And that's the extent of their list? Okay. Well, that's a short list, but other textbooks elaborate. You know, they have more. And this is kind of...
categories. It breaks it down into, initiate policy,
right.
veto legislation.
And so that might suggest chief policymaker. Okay. Again, those are the only two that are based in the Constitution, or that have a direct basis in the Constitution. So most of these other powers, all of these other powers are evolved, right? They are political in nature. Yet the American public perceives that these are the powers of the presidency. Okay, well, let's elaborate a little bit on this idea of the constitutional basis of presidential power. The point that I was trying to get to is that the framers of the Constitution were imagining a weak executive, even by the standards of the late 18th century. Okay? The framers of the Constitution, when they created the presidency, were envisioning a weak executive, even by the standards of their day. Now, why would they have contemplated a weak executive? Well, it goes to their colonial experience. When Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, by the way, when was that? What's the date? 1776. And by the way, when did the Constitution go into effect? 1789. Okay. And who was the first president?
Washington.
George Washington. When was Washington inaugurated? 1789. Right? So from this period, 1776 to 1789, you got a dozen years there, right? Where there was no executive. You want to know how much the early founders distrusted executive government, distrusted executive authority? There was no executive during this period. There was a Congress, but no executive. Now, why did they distrust executive authority so much? Well, as I started to say, when Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776, I'm going to invite you to look at it on your own. If you haven't done it recently, you should go look at it. You'll notice that about 2/3 of that document is directed at what they perceive to be abuses of authority by the king. It's directed at George III, King of England. He's done this, he's done this, he's done this, he's done that. Okay? It's a list of grievances.